What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I am your host, and my name is John, and this week we are back with episode 92, where we will be analyzing and predicting the UFC Fight Night card going down this Saturday afternoon, headlined by Paul Felder versus Dan Hooker. This 13-fight card will take place in Auckland, New Zealand, with all 13 fights taking place on ESPN+. The 7 prelim fights will start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, with the 6 main card fights starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So it should be a hell of a card going down from New Zealand this weekend. Really looking forward to it. Got a cracker of a main event, and we're going to start things off in the prelims like we always do. First fight of the night is in the women's flyweight division. We have Shayna Dobson, who is 3-3, taking on Pitolo-Sato, who is 8-3. The opening betting line for this fight was Cachoeira -170 to Dobson +140. Since then, the line has flipped. We are now seeing Dobson -220 to Cachoeira at +180. So, crazy opening line in this one. The line has completely flipped. A ton of action came in on Dobson. Can't say I blame the public. Scooping up that plus money on Dobson was definitely a good bet. Where it's at now in the -200 range, I'd definitely say that it's dog or pass, even though I do think Dobson should win the fight. I won't put too much analysis into this one because I believe this is as low level as the UFC really can get. This is Cachoeira's 4th fight in UFC. She's lost all 3 of the first 3. Dobson's been struggling a lot lately too. I mean, they're on like a 5-fight losing streak combined, and it's not it won't be a good fight. It'll be a sloppy kickboxing match. Cachoeira is pretty comfortable in those. She's been in a few lately. She's not afraid to throw a lot of output, get hit a lot. Her defense is awful. She's like one of the most hit fighters in the UFC, and Dobson should be just a much better striker and a much more technical striker. Her boxing isn't bad, and she should be landing the better, cleaner punches and winning these rounds. But I mean, it's so low level that I definitely don't think you can be betting it at where it's at now. I'd say it's dog or pass where it's at now, and Cachoeira could even make this fight a close decision if it's that type of low level brawl where they're just trading punches back and forth. So the pick is going to be Dobson by decision. Not a confident one at all because this is so low level. And with that being said, we're going to move on to the next fight. In the welterweight division, we have Maki Pitolo, who is 12-5, taking on Takashi Sato, who is 15-3. The opening betting line for this one was Sato, the -170 favorite, to Pitolo +140. Right now, we are seeing Sato -135 to Pitolo +115. So, line margins tightening up. Pitolo getting the more action of the two. And this one should be another fun fight too. Pitolo looked pretty rough in his debut. He was trading punches with Callum Potter on the feet, getting hit a lot himself. Eventually kind of gassed out a little bit and got taken down over and over again. And pretty much dominated on the canvas in rounds 2 and 3 versus Callum Potter. It was a close fight on the scorecards. Rounds 1 and 2 were both close rounds, but the rightful guy in Potter won that fight. Sato's last fight was he got pretty much dominated by Bilal Muhammad. He was taken down a few times in that fight, outboxed, and eventually got his back taken and rear naked choked in the 3rd round. But I think that Sato is the more technical fighter of the two. He seems to just, he's a little more minimalistic. He knows his boxing is really his bread and butter, and he doesn't, get too overzealous, throwing a lot of crazy combinations like Pitolo does. Pitolo is very aggressive, likes trying to knock guys out in round 1. But, I mean, he does have good boxing. He does have fast hands. He throws good combinations. He digs to the body a lot. But I honestly think he's a natural 155er. I don't really know what he's doing at 170. But he's fought at upper weight classes his entire career. So I think that Sato, being the bigger guy, being the more technical puncher, is going to win him this fight. I think that we'll just see Sato landing the better, cleaner punches. Meanwhile, Pitolo could be teeing off in combinations and tiring himself out again. But I think Sato will be counter-punching, landing the better punches. And we could even see a level change. Sato's got some pretty decent takedowns. He's got some judo background. He can hit takedowns of his own. He actually even landed a brief takedown at the end of round 2 versus Bilal Muhammad, which is a really nice throw that he landed. So look for Sato to mix up the ground game to exploit that weakness of Pitolo. It could be a close fight if the fight stays on the feet and these guys are trading back and forth. It's definitely a winnable fight for Pitolo, but I'm going to side with Sato and pick him to win by decision. The next fight takes place in the women's strawweight division. We have Loma Lookboonmee-Hill, who is 4-1, taking on Angela Hill, who is 11-7. The opening betting line for this one is Hill -180, Lookboonmee +140. Right now we are seeing Hill -175 to Lookboonmee at +155. So actually a lot of action has come in on Loma Lookboonmee in the past few hours. Honestly, Hill was down to -200 for certain periods of time, and now she's all the way up to -175. So this is going to be a great fight. I think this is my favorite fight on the card. It's going to be the closest thing to an actual Muay Thai fight that we've ever seen in the UFC. Loma, of course, comes from the Muay Thai background. She's a former world champion in Muay Thai, over 200, 300 fights in Thailand, and is just making her transition to MMA. Had a great UFC debut in her last fight versus Albu. She was able to just dominate the clinch in that fight. She did get tagged with some punches, though. I mean, I was a little bit worried about how she got hit with some punches on the way out of those clinch exchanges from Albu, because Albu is not a good fighter. She's mostly power and strength, and she was still able to connect with some punches on Lookboonmee, and it's just because Loma's style is not punching oriented. I mean, they just do not punch that much in Muay Thai. She probably made her career around the clinch. It's pretty obvious that she did. Her clinch game is so good. Her knees in the clinch and her elbows are terrific, but she definitely lacks defense coming in and out of that clinch, and that's not a good sign for MMA, because punches are much more common in MMA. Those 4-ounce gloves are way harder to adapt to than those 10-ounce gloves they use in Muay Thai, and I think that's going to be a big factor in this fight. Is Angela Hill is going to be the better puncher. She's going to be landed the more significant punches of the two, and it's going to be hard for Loma to overcome that. I mean, she might have success in the clinch, or I think that she will be landing her knees and elbows as always, but Angela Hill also comes from a Muay Thai background. She has 15 amateur Muay Thai fights, even a few pro Muay Thai fights. I mean, she really started in Muay Thai. She said her entire career she's been sparring with Muay Thai with elbows, and she's ready for this type of fight. So it's actually a really bad matchup for Loma Lookboonmee, because if you're thinking of all the women who have skill in the clinch, Hill is probably one of the best ones, and that's going to really negate Loma's biggest strength in this fight. So I'm picking Hill in this one. I think I know she has the way more UFC experience, the way more experience against the better competition. She's going to be a little bit bigger in there. She's been really active lately, and the most active fighter in the UFC in the past 18 months. And I think that coming off that 2 finishes in a row over Cyphers and Crute-Oleksiejczuk, her confidence is at an all-time high. She took this fight on short notice. She's confident in herself. I think she goes into New Zealand and puts on a great kickboxing fight with Loma and wins a decision pretty clearly. So it should be a great fight. I'm kind of upset that Loma will probably face her first loss this early in her UFC career, because I was such a big fan of her first fight. She was supposed to fight like Granger or Goldie or something like that, and she would have dominated either one of those guys or girls in the clinch. But she'll be back. She'll improve a little bit, and this should be a really fun fight. I'm really looking forward to it. And the pick is Hill by decision. The next fight takes place in the men's flyweight division. We have Kai Kara-France, who is 20-8, taking on Tyson-Nam, who is 18-10-1. The opening betting line for this one was France, the favorite, at -352, Nam +275. Right now we are seeing France -260 to Nam +220. So more action coming in on Tyson-Nam in this one. I'm sure there's two-way action in this one. I think where the opening line was set was pretty accurate, and even where it's at now is pretty accurate. I just think that it's going to be real hard for Nam to win this fight, because his UFC debut, he showed that he has skill, he has technique, but he just looked a little tentative in that fight. He only landed 40 strikes versus Sergio Pettis. He looked a little bit scared to let go of his strikes, maybe had some octagon jitters. And I think we will see a better performance out of Nam here. It's just still hard to picture Nam having the output and the volume to beat KKF-France, especially in his. I think he's Australian, but anytime if it's an Australian or New Zealand fighter, they're gonna have an advantage in this fight because the crowd is gonna be so loud for these guys when they're fighting. I mean, KKF-France, that's evident. I mean, he fought Julian Paiva in Australia. Probably should have lost that fight and was given a decision in his home country. So very possible that happens again in this fight. If it's a close fight and it's even, you gotta side with the judges giving it to the hometown guy in France. But I like this matchup other than that. I mean, I just think that France is the more complete fighter. I mean, he knows what he needs to do a little bit more. Nam has glimpses of knockout power. Like, he's got head kick knockouts and overhand right knockouts, and he does have that power in his punches, but he just doesn't have a very consistent offense. He doesn't have very good game plans where he can consistently win fights, and it's going to be hard to beat France because his takedown defense is not bad. He's got good offensive grappling as well. His boxing is good, and he can go that full 3 rounds, although he does tend to slow down a bit in round 3. So, and I mean, France, I think, lost his last fight to Brandon Moreno. He got pretty much outclassed by Moreno. A lot of people thought he was going to win that fight, but he just ran into an athlete in Moreno, and that gave him his first loss in a while. First loss in the UFC. So I think KKF-France bounces back in this one. I think Nam will look a little bit better than he did versus Pettis, but still ultimately lose a decision in this one. It should be a fun fight between the two flyweights. I'm expecting some fun striking exchanges between the two, but I got to side with KKF-France to win a decision in this one. So the pick is KKF-France. The next fight takes place in the welterweight division. We have Callan Potter, who is 18-8, taking on Keenan Song, who is 15-5. The opening betting line for this one was Song, the favorite, at -285 to Potter +225. Right now we are seeing Song -200 to Potter at +170. So more action coming in on Callan Potter, rightfully so. I think that where that initial line was set, it was a bit too high. And basically on the feet in this one, I think that the Song should be the better striker. Potter's defense is just really bad. I mean, that fight versus Pitolo was a miracle he didn't get knocked out in. And, I mean, he was knocked out by Jalen Turner pretty easily before that. But, I mean, the guy just willingly eats shots, has no boxing defense. And when he is trading in the pocket, the man's feet are completely still, and he squares up on the attack. I mean, he is in serious danger of getting knocked out pretty much any time he is standing on the feet. But Song, not really the type of knockout power type of guy. I mean, I don't think he really has any knockouts in the UFC. More of a volume fighter to win decisions. And, I mean, he's kind of been struggling with that. Actually, he does have a few knockouts, so I was wrong about that. But his past few fights have been decisions. Lost a decision to Moreno, got out-volumed in that one. And Derek Krantz, I mean, he might have gotten lucky winning that decision against Krantz because he struggled a lot in that fight. He got taken down a few times, really struggled getting off of his back versus Derek Krantz. And even on the feet, wasn't like dominantly winning the exchanges to clearly decide that he was going to win that fight, which is why the decision was so close, but he did win that one. That fight did take place in China too. So basically, Potter has a chance to win this fight if he gets the takedowns. I mean, his offensive takedown game is not great. He does have a decent top game, decent jiu-jitsu, but not a very positionally sound grappler. I can't really rely on him. If he had a great top game, better takedowns, and would stay on, I knew he would get takedowns and stay on top and just exploit that weakness of Song. I think I would probably be looking to bet him here, but with the fact that he is just not really a positionally sound grappler, he had a few submission attempts on the Pitolo where he slipped off the back or went for a sloppy guillotine or something like that, and put himself in bad positions. So I think that Song will probably get taken down, but I don't think Potter can do enough damage and get enough control from the top position to win the rounds and win the fight. And when the fight's on the feet, I think that Song will probably just be winning the exchanges by landing the better shots. But I mean, Potter's going to be aggressive. He's going to be coming forward. He's going to be looking for that takedown. And, I mean, with a guy who doesn't have good output like Song is not the most effective striker. I mean, Potter has every potential to make this fight very close and possibly even win. So it's definitely a dog or pass where it's at now. I don't see any reason to be laying that chalk on Song. I mean, maybe he comes out here and blasts Song or blasts Potter with a punch that gets an early knockout and looks minus 200, but other than an early knockout, I have a hard time seeing Song put together a really complete performance where he looks like that minus 200 favorite. So the pick in this one will be Song by decision, but it's dog or pass all day, and be careful betting Song at minus 200. The next fight takes place in the welterweight division. We have Jake Mathews, who is 15-4, taking on Emil-Meek, who is 9-4. The opening betting line for this one was Mathews, the favorite, at minus 240 to Emil-Meek at plus 190. Right now, we are seeing Mathews minus 200, Meek plus 170. So, more action coming in on Emil-Meek in this one, although there is two-way action coming in here. Meek is coming off of that long layoff. I think it's been well over 2 years since he fought last. Let's figure out the last time he did. It was in July of 2018, so about a year and a half off. He's coming off of a few decision losses to Usman and Fabinski, and where he really struggled with the wrestling, the takedown, top game with those guys. But he makes you work for takedowns. He's not easy to take down. He's not easy to hold down. He likes to explode and back up to his feet. Very strong, powerful guy. And in terms of on the feet in this one, I mean, Meek doesn't really have a great striking, but I mean, he comes forward, he has good pressure, and he throws a lot, and that's really how he outstruck Jordan Meehan. Is he was actually able to take down Jordan Meehan in that one, keep top position for some time, and just march him down on the feet and just be more aggressive and throw more, and that's how he won the striking in that one. So he could do that again here versus Mathews, because on the feet in this one, these guys are both strong, reckless fighters. They both don't have the best IQ, and on the feet it should be actually a pretty close matchup. I actually think that if the fight stays in the feet, it likely looks a lot closer than the odds indicate, because Mathews just isn't that great of a striker. I mean, he can wing an occasional powerful right hand and drop Li Jingling with it a few times, but he also can just hit takedowns and coast from top position from time to time. He's just a really hard fighter to rely on. He does a lot of variable things when he's fighting, so that's why this fight's hard to predict, because they match up kind of similar. They're both strong, brute force type of guys who are pretty well rounded, and they have decent striking and grappling, but I think Mathews is just the more complete fighter. I think that he has the better physicality of the two. I think that, I mean, we've seen Mathews gas out a little bit, while we really haven't seen that from Meek, but I mean, we've seen Meek lose fights very, very decisively before. That fight with Fabinski, I mean, he just couldn't stop the takedowns in those fights. He really struggles with takedown defense. And I think that if the striking isn't going well, then Mathews should start level changing, should hit takedowns, and should win from top position. So I just think Mathews has more ways to win this fight, and that's why I'm going to pick him by decision. But I do think it's dog or pass. I think that Mathews is hard to trust at this price, no matter who the opponent. And I think this fight could be a lot closer if Mathews, fights like he typically does, where he's making bad decisions. So the pick is Mathews by decision, and dog or pass in the betting window. The next fight takes place in the lightweight division. We have Jalen Turner, who is 8-5, taking on Joshua Culibao, who is 8-0. Opening betting line for this one was Turner, the favorite, at minus 140 to Culibao plus 100. Right now we are seeing Turner minus 210 to Culibao plus 175. So I actually think that was a pretty terrible opening betting line for Turner at minus 140. I mean, Culibao does not deserve that plus 100. I mean, even where the line is at now, I think there might be a little bit of value on Jalen Turner, because, I mean, he just has a good matchup here. Culibao, I believe, is a former featherweight moving up to lightweight pretty recently. He's a regional fighter, doesn't have many good wins on his record. A lot of his opponents are pretty low level, and it just seems like he's an obvious local prospect who they brought in to beef up the card for locals. Maybe Turner's opponent fell out or something like that, but there's not too much footage of Culibao online. He seems primarily like a boxer. He can hit takedowns from time to time, but I just haven't seen enough from his top game nor his striking to think that he can really compete with Turner. I mean, in the striking, actually, I think that Turner will be quite better, actually. He has the long reach. He's got a lot of length behind him. He's got good straight punches. He can use his long kicks and knees pretty well as in addition to that. So I think that Culibao on the feet will likely be getting outstruck pretty cleanly here. He'll probably go for like an early knockout and just try to get Turner out of there early and please the crowd, but I think he'll probably be met with Turner's clinch. He'll slow him down, and Turner should just wear him down over time. I mean, I guess Culibao has a chance at landing takedowns and getting top position, maybe even a submission, because Turner has struggled with takedowns before, like in the Frevola fight. But I mean, he showed some decent defensive grappling in that fight. He was able to get back up to his feet a few times, and I mean, he also did get kind of lucky by Frevola going for a lot of sloppy submissions, like a guillotine a few times. And I mean, if Turner was facing a really sound positional grappler and could take him down over and over again and keep top position, he would be in trouble. But I don't really think that's who Culibao is. I think that he will attempt takedowns, but probably just won't keep Turner down long, and Turner might even land a knockout as this fight goes. So I think Turner wins the striking in this fight. He stays off his back, and I'm going to pick Turner by knockout as the prediction. Moving on to the first fight on the main card in the featherweight division, we have Zubaira Tukhugov, who is 18-4-1, taking on Kevin Aguilar, who is 17-2. The opening betting line for this one was Tukhugov, the -150 favorite, to Aguilar +120. Right now, we are seeing Zubaira -105, Aguilar -115. So it's a near pick'em line right now. Aguilar has been getting way more steady action. Actually, the early action came in heavy on Aguilar, pushed him to a favorite, and now a little bit more action is coming in on Zubaira the past few weeks. And man, what a great fight! Really looking forward to this one. And Zubaira, first fight in the UFC, took place. First fight in 3 years was back in Abu Dhabi in September. It was a draw versus Leron Murphy. He started good in round 1, dropped Murphy with a punch, was able to land takedowns to keep top position, but he gassed out real bad in round 2. Started desperately shooting for takedowns and just laying and praying on top. In rounds 2 and 3, Murphy was landing all the good strikes on the feet in that one, and even some good strikes from the bottom on the ground. And Zubaira was just desperately going for takedowns. He was just so tired. There's rumors that he had staph infection. There's of course the fact that the arena was 95 degrees that day or something like that. But I mean, I don't think you can take those excuses too much into consideration. I mean, Tukhugov was coming off of a 3-year layoff. And his style is very wrestling heavy. It's not completely out of the realm of possibilities that he would get tired coming off that long layoff with such a physically demanding game plan. And I think that's what happened. I mean, I don't take too much stock into the heat or the staph infection rumors or whatever. I mean, his coach did say that he had it. I mean, but who knows? People always have excuses when they lose or didn't get the win in his case, like the draw. So this fight comes down to, on the feet, I think that Aguilar will be the much better striker. He's got really good boxing. Tukhugov, really all he does is just wing overhands and big hooks. He just goes for super power punches and doesn't really set anything up well. So in the striking, I think that Aguilar is the better striker by a pretty wide margin, and we should see him land punches pretty early in this fight. It really comes down to the takedowns of Zubaira versus the takedown defense of Aguilar. And Aguilar's takedown defense is actually really good. He's been shot on 16 times in the UFC by Barzola and by Ige and by Bert Glenn, and he stuffed 15 of 16 takedowns. It was only taken down once by Dan Ige. So he's got really good takedown defense. I mean, the performance he put on against Barzola was great. Just really good takedown defense in that fight. And he did get taken down by Joey Gomez on the Contender Series a few times, got held down for about 60-90 seconds 2 times in that fight by Gomez. So he is able to get taken down, but I think his takedown defense has just gotten a lot better since that Contender Series fight, and it's shown in his fights. So I actually think that this is a great matchup for Aguilar. He's used to fighting wrestlers at this point, and with the fact that Zubaira struggled really getting any good offense up from top position versus Murphy. Like, he was getting the takedowns, but he was so tired that he couldn't pass guard, he couldn't land ground and pound, he couldn't go for any subs. And luckily the judges saw that and awarded those rounds 2 and 3 to Murphy. as he deserved. I mean, it could have been a Murphy decision. I was happy with the draw, betting Murphy in that fight at 2 or 3 to 1. I forget what it was. I was just happy with the fact that I got my money back in comparison, because it was such a close fight, and the judges easily could have given it 30-27 to Zubaria. Lazy judges who award top position really heavily could have given that fight 3-0 to Zubaria, but they gave that the fight. One judge gave it a draw, one judge gave it to Murphy, one judge gave it to Zubaria. So great judging on display in that one, and hopefully that comes into play here, because if Zubaria gets takedowns, I think that he won't do much with them. Aguilar will probably bounce back to his feet, and Aguilar will go right back to landing the better strikes, and Zubaria will probably start tiring a little bit, going for those takedowns over and over again. So I'm going with Aguilar on this one. I've been a pretty big fan of the guy since he's gotten the UFC, and I think that this is a really good matchup for him. I think if he's able to stay off of his back, stuff those takedowns like he typically does, I mean, he should win this fight easily, because outside of a big loopy punch that drops him on the feet from Zubaria, I think that the striking will go heavily in favor of Aguilar, and Zubaria will be pretty lost without those takedowns. So the pick in this one is Aguilar to win by decision. The next fight takes place in the lightweight division. We have Magomed Mustafaev, who is 14-3, taking on Brad Riddell, who is 7-1. The opening betting line for this one was Mustafaev, the favorite, at -425 to Brad Riddell at +325. Right now, we are seeing Mustafaev -130 to Brad Riddell at +110. So that could be a line error. I'm seeing +160 is where the line started on 5 dimes, and I'd say probably Bet Online opened Brad Riddell up at +325. Yeah, so that line likely existed for only a few seconds, but terrible opening line by the odds maker at Bet Online. I mean, I actually think that you can make a case for Riddell being the favorite in this fight, because Mustafaev's impressive. He is an athlete. He's a total freak strength, brute strength type of athlete, and it showed in that last fight versus Fiziev. I mean, he landed a spinning back kick on the guard of Fiziev and still knocked him out. And it was just a crazy performance. It was coming off of a 2 or 3 year layoff too. So, I mean, Mustafaev's got crazy power on the feet. His spinning back kicks are a dangerous technique, and his boxing technique isn't anything special. But he does have good knees to the body, good kicks to the body. I mean, it looks like he comes from maybe a Sanda background, similar to Muslim Salikov, and just has extremely powerful kicks. But he has gotten taken down. He got dominated on the mat versus Kevin Lee. And we just haven't seen much from Mustafaev lately. I mean, he's gotten a few first-round finishes, like versus Fiziev and Proctor, but I mean, we haven't seen his overall skill. We haven't seen him out of the first round in so long that it's hard to get a feel for the guy. And Riddell, on the other hand, made his UFC debut last fight against Malarkey. Crazy fight where he was really beating the pulp out of Malarkey for most of that fight, but did get taken down a few times. Did get his back taken one time in round 3, but for the most part just was doing so much damage on Malarkey. He was dropping him on the feet, and he was digging those punches to the body. I mean, he's got really good boxing, a lot of power behind it, and he throws combinations. He digs to the body well. He's got good takedown defense, and he trains over at City Kickboxing, one of the best gyms in the world right now in Australia, with the 2 champions, Adesanya, Volkanovski, Hooker, Kaikar, France. He's got incredible training partners, and they're all in camp right now. They're all on this card. And basically, I think that Mustafaev, we haven't seen enough from him lately to think that he should be the favorite here. I mean, we've seen some quick knockouts from him, but I don't hold too much stock in them, because we haven't seen his overall game. And I think that if this fight gets out of the first round, if we don't see Mustafaev just able to blast Riddell on the feet with kicks like he has his past few opponents, who knows what to expect from Mustafaev. It's been so long since we've seen him struggle in a fight like that. So I think that Riddell's boxing will be better of the two. I think that his the advantage he has will actually could edge the striking for him, because if Riddell is getting into the pocket, he's getting into boxing range, and he's not giving Mustafaev the room to kick, I think that Riddell should definitely be winning the striking exchanges. And both guys can hit offensive takedowns and are definitely better offensive grapplers than defensive, I'd say. So we might see either guy look to level change at time to time to edge close rounds. And I just think that Riddell has been more active over the past few years. He's got that full 15-minute fight in versus Malarkey, where we've got to see his full arsenal of skills, and training at City Kickboxing. That's a huge advantage, being at home for this fight. And I think that that's enough reason for me to think that Riddell is a good bet at plus money. Have not bet him yet. Actually, I'm just sort of picking him to win the fight. I actually think he wins by knockout because, I mean, Malarkey was pretty crazy to not get knocked out in that fight. I mean, he ate some massive shots. I just see this one being a brawl in round one. I think Mustafaev comes out aggressive and Riddell just sits down on his punches and hurts Mustafaev. We could see Mustafaev get another kick knockout, another spin kick knockout, or a body kick or something like that too. So it should be a crazy fight while it lasts. I don't see this one going the distance. I see someone get knocked out in this one, and I actually think that Riddell's going to land the knockout with punches. So the pick is Riddell, and might look to lock in a bet on him at plus money. The next fight takes place in the heavyweight division. We have Marcos Rogerio de Lima, who is 16-6-1, taking on Ben Sosoli, who is 7-2. The opening betting line for this one was De Lima, the favorite, at -150 to Sosoli +120. Right now we are seeing De Lima -140 to Sosoli +120. So line staying just about the same in this one. Not too much action coming in on either side. It's a hard fight to bet because I think that De Lima is the better fighter everywhere. I mean, I think that on the feet he's got better technique. On the ground he is 100% got the better technique. I mean, he can hit takedowns, he can hit keep top position, pass guard. I mean, he actually rocked Stefan Struve with a punch in the first 3 seconds of their fight, stayed on top for 5 minutes, might have gassed out a little bit after that, and then got taken down in round 2. Got his guard pass, got smashed on the bottom, and eventually got submitted by Stefan Struve. Kind of a weird performance from him because in his fight before that versus Wojciechowski, he was able to do good work from all aspects. I mean, he landed the better strikes versus Wojciechowski. He showed some good clinch game, wearing out Wojciechowski, and then eventually was landing takedowns, keeping top position. I mean, he really showed a well-rounded game in that fight. He fought the full 15 minutes and won that fight very decisively. Versus Adam Wojciechowski. And now you got Sosoli over here, who is just another regional Aussie heavyweight, just like Tai Tuivasa, just like Justin Tafa. I mean, these guys don't have much technique. They're just brawlers. They like getting in cages and fighting. And Sosoli doesn't seem to have much takedown defense, doesn't seem to know what jiu-jitsu is much at all, and really just throws punches on the feet without much technique. And I mean, you saw in that fight versus Greg Hardy. I mean, he really didn't know what to do. It was a staring contest for the most part. Both guys barely threw anything in that fight. It was, I mean, I guess it was a feather in his cap to go the full 15 minutes, but, I mean, Sosoli showed nothing in that fight, honestly, showed nothing. And, I mean, I guess he showed that he could compose himself a little bit and not get crazy and go for the knockout. I guess that's a good sign. But, I mean, in this fight here, I think Lima should win the fight wherever it goes. On the feet, it could be a little shaky. On the feet is enough reason to maybe not bet Lima because, you know, even though Lima should have a massive advantage on the ground, should be able to hit takedowns, keep top position, just like Juan Adams should have been able to versus Tafa. But on the feet, it gets close. And, you know, Adams did not shoot takedowns in the fight, was fooling around on the feet, gets dropped and knocked out. And that could happen here. If Lima fools around on the feet instead of chasing that takedown, he gives Sosoli his only path to victory, which is a knockout. So I don't think Sosoli can win on the scorecards. I don't think he can win by submission, of course. I think a knockout in the first maybe 5 minutes is Sosoli's only path to victory, and Lima should run away with it afterwards. So I think that Lima should be hitting takedowns, should be dominating from top position, and maybe even we'll get a submission along the line, along the way here. So I think it's more likely that Lima just lays and prays in top position and wins the decision here. So the pick is going to be Lima, and it's going to be by decision, and might even have to eye a bet at -140 because I honestly think that he's the way better fighter everywhere. everywhere. And besides an early knockout on the feet from Sosoli, he will not lose this fight. So pretty confident in Lima. He's just hard to lay that minus 150 on. The next fight takes place in the women's strawweight division. We have Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who is 12-5, taking on Yan Xiaonan, who is 11-1. The opening betting line for this one was Xiaonan, the favorite, at minus 180 to Karolina at plus 150. Right now, we are seeing Yan Xiaonan minus 265 to Karolina Kowalkiewicz at plus 225. So, way more action coming in on Yan Xiaonan, and rightfully so. I mean, it's mostly a fade of Karolina at this point, I'm pretty sure, because Karolina has just looked dire in her past 2 fights. I mean, maybe even 3 fights. I mean, she's just not looked the same lately. She's been rumored about trying to start a family for a long time now, and that's always kind of in the back of her mind, but Karolina is 2-5 in her past 7 fights. Now, she is fighting really good competition and still tends to beat the lower level competition like Jodie Esquivel and Felice Herrig, but Andrade knocked her out. Waterson dominated her, took her down over and over again, and Alexa Grasso just boxed her up, and she showed nothing in any of those fights. I mean, she looked like a shell of her former self. You got to question what the motivation is behind her fighting. Seeing a lot of people questioning whether she could be just fighting for one more paycheck, just getting the last fight out of this contract. But that's an entirely real possibility. And just other than that, though, I just don't like this fight for her because Xiaonan is the better kickboxer. She had a real close kickboxing fight with Angela Hill. Rounds 2 and 3 of those fights were really close, and she had good volume. Round 1, she barely threw anything, almost got caught in a triangle. But in round 2, she really picked up her output and gave Hill a tough fight. Actually won that fight by decision, although I think that Hill deserved that decision, winning rounds 1 and 3, but it was a really close fight regardless. And I just think that Yan will be the better kickboxer here. She'll have the better output. She's got really good side kicks and head kicks that could be a problem for Karolina. Karolina's clinch game, that was really her best attribute, has kind of evaporated in the past few fights, and I just really see Karolina having a hard time winning this fight here unless she severely ramps up her volume out of nowhere and her output, and she's ready to have a high output kickboxing match to beat Yan here. Other than that, though, I mean, I see Yan winning this one by decision. I think her volume and her technique will be just too much for Karolina, and the people coming in early on that Yan money line were probably getting a good line. But where it's at now, it's definitely dog or pass. Maybe some parlay material for Yan, but I would not be laying that huge chalk on Yan in this spot. So the pick is Yan by decision. The next fight takes place in the light heavyweight division. We have Jimmy Crute, who is 10-1, taking on Crute-Oleksiejczuk, who is 14-3. The opening betting line for this one was McCall minus 150 to Crute plus 120. Right now we are seeing McCall minus 125 to Crute plus 105. So more action coming in on Crute's way in this one, and I agree with that line movement. This should be a really close fight, and I'm a little bit more of a McCall disbeliever than a lot of the people out there. He seems to be actually kind of a fan favorite, which is pretty surprising to me. I mean, the dude has pretty nice boxing, but in terms of technique, I mean, I don't think his boxing is anything special. I mean, the light heavyweight division is the skill level is pretty low, and anyone who is really throwing punches can be considered a good boxer. But I mean, his technique in the hands, I mean, it's not good. I mean, he wings punches, he overextends a lot. I mean, he does dig to the body very well. I would say that's probably his best attribute, is the body punches. It's actually how he scored a one-punch knockout over John Vellante. Just a well-placed liver shot and just put him out of there. And in the boxing range, Oleksiejczuk should be the better striker. I mean, but Crute is just aggressive and powerful. And I mean, if he's coming forward and throwing, I mean, it's hard to outstrike Crute sometimes. And he actually showed a really nice counter right hand versus Sam Alvey, dropped Alvey, and eventually finished up with some ground and pound for the TKO finish. So I mean, Crute is no joke on the feet either. I mean, he's so powerful and aggressive that if this one's on the feet, that I don't think it's a sure thing that Oleksiejczuk is winning the striking. And now on the ground, I give the advantage to pretty heavily to Crute there. I mean, Oleksiejczuk showed some major weakness on the ground versus OSP. I mean, he got taken down by OSP, and basically got caught in OSP's bread and butter submission, the submission that the OSP choke. I mean, it's pretty much named after him at this point, and he still managed to get Von Flue to buy OSP. And he looked like he gassed out pretty bad in that one. He went real hard for the finish early. He dropped OSP early, but when OSP was still standing in round 2, McCall wilted a little bit. He was started to get outstruck by OSP in round 2, then got double leg taken down and submitted. So it was a bad performance from Oleksiejczuk. He was like a minus 300 favorite in that fight and still mushed pretty hard. And it seems like people are still pretty willing to trust him, which I don't get, man. I think the Crute, his athleticism, his power, and his ground game can really win him this fight. Crute doesn't have the type of ground game where he's going to hit takedowns and keep top position, but he is a really smart grappler on the ground in some weird ways. He got taken down by Paul Craig over and over again, but still found a way to reverse position every time. He would land a sweep or he would just explode. He'd land a bump and roll sweep. These basic sweeps, basic jiu-jitsu sweeps that the Crute was landing on Craig. They were impressive. He's just, I think it's mostly power. He's just so physical and such an athlete that he can explode his way out of certain positions. And he tried doing that versus Cirkunov in his last fight and got caught with a Peruvian necktie. It was a beautiful Armin guillotine modified necktie, whatever kind of choke. But if Crute would have escaped that choke, I honestly think that he would have started wearing on Cirkunov. Cirkunov would have started feeling the pressure of Crute, and eventually Crute would have probably taken over and started to win that fight. But so Crute isn't the most reliable takedown guy, but once it gets to the floor, I have no question that he will be able to outgrapple Oleksiejczuk. So on the feet, slight advantage to Oleksiejczuk in this one. He's definitely got the better boxing, but I just think Crute is so aggressive, and if he comes out and throws solid output, I just don't think that Oleksiejczuk has the boxing acumen to counterpunch Crute and to really get his boxing going and make himself look like a favorite here. And in the grappling, I think Crute could hit takedowns. We could see him looking to implement his first offensive grappling game plan here in the UFC. So I'm picking Jimmy Crute in this one. He's going to be in his hometown, or he's Aussie too. Same thing I was saying with Aussie, New Zealand. He will have the crowd behind him. He's such an athlete in that cage that I actually think that he will out-athlete McCall here and win this fight somehow. I'll go with, let's say, a TKO, or maybe, no, let's go with submission. I'll go submission for Crute in round 2, just like OSP got McCall with last fight. So Crute is the pick, and we'll probably lock in some action on him at plus money. And in the main event of the evening, in the lightweight division, we got Paul Felder, who is 17-4, taking on Dan Hooker, who is 19-8. The opening betting line for this one was Hooker minus 120, Felder minus 120. A dead pick'em even line set by the odds maker in this one. Right now we are seeing Hooker minus 150 to Felder plus 130. So Hooker getting a little more action. The early action came in heavy on Hooker. The late action bounced back a little bit on Felder. We actually saw it go back to minus 120 earlier in the week, and now that late action is coming back in on Hooker here. And man, what a great fight between these two. The first main event, the first 5-round fight between these two, or for both of these guys, and both of them deserve it. They've both been winning some good fights lately. Felder works for the UFC. He's a great commentator. Hooker has been getting some good finishes and is coming off of a nice win in his last fight over Ally Quinta. He's coming off of some finishes over James Vick. He knocked out Gilbert Burns, and Felder's coming off of avenging his loss versus Barboza. He's coming off a decision victory versus Vick as well. And both of these guys are fun strikers. They both produce entertaining fights, and I really don't see any way this fight could be boring. Besides the slight chance that maybe Felder adapts his game plan for 5 rounds and isn't as aggressive. Same with Hooker. These guys both could be a little more conservative to how they usually fight due to the fact that this is 5 rounds. But I don't think that'll happen. I think they'll fight as they usually do, and they'll probably come out looking to trade strikes on the feet right away. And I think that Hooker is the better striker. I think I'm comfortable saying that now, is because I think he's more effective with his boxing. He He will throw out his jab a lot more. He lands his jab with a lot more consistency, and he occasionally sits down on his right hand. And I just think that Felder tends to throw full power into every punch. I mean, that fight versus Barboza, he was throwing the jab hook or jab straight hook over and over again, and he was just throwing it so hard, and every punch was 100% power, and they weren't really landing. Meanwhile, Hooker is the type to throw his jab at 50%, throw his jab at 50%, and then sit down on his right hand at 100%, and he's much more likely to land his punches. While I think that Felder kind of just spams combinations. He throws that loopy left hook a lot. I mean, he threw that a lot versus Barboza, and it just wasn't really landing much. And he had, good optics in that fight. He was walking down Barboza. He was cutting off the cage well as the fight went on. But he was, both guys tend to struggle a little bit with body kicks at range. That could be a weapon that both of them look to exploit. Hooker definitely struggles with kicks more. The body kicks versus Barboza really lost him that fight. He just could not get into boxing range, just kept getting stuck at kicking range and got kicked to death by Barboza. That was actually his last loss back in, I think, early 2018 or late 2018 or something like that. But since then, Hooker has looked sensational. And I think this should be a really close striking battle on the feet, but I just think that Hooker will be more effective with his punches. He will be landing the better strikes. I'm really interested to see how their kicking games match up. I mean, Hooker's got really good kicks. Felder's got good calf kicks that he likes digging to a lot. Felder's got great elbows. He throws elbows on the inside, and he throws them at range too. One of the few guys in the UFC who actively looks for long-range elbows, but Felder does it, and he does it well, and he tends to cut his opponents. But a bad thing for Felder is that he gets cut easily. He's gotten cut in a lot of his recent fights. He tends to bleed a lot. I mean, I think all three of his most recent fights, the Vic fight, the Barboza, and the Perry fight, I mean, he was bleeding pretty bad in all of those. Like in round one of Barboza, he got cut with a headbutt and ended up getting, I think, a cut from somewhere else too. He had 2 cuts on his head, and he could have won round 1. It was a really close round, but I mean, if you got 2 cuts on your head and you're gushing blood, and it was a close round, and your opponent doesn't have much blood on him, I mean, that's not good optics for winning the rounds here. So it should be a great fight. I'm really looking forward to this one. I don't think it'll be boring at all. I think these guys will come in here to crack. I think they'll probably trade on the feet, and I see Hooker landing the better strikes consistently. And I think that in the later rounds, maybe rounds 3 or 4, we're going to start to see Felder slowing down a little bit, starting to see that damage accumulate, and we might even see a TKO stoppage from a cut or something like that, or just a swarm of punches from Hooker. So the pick in this one is going to be Hooker. I'm pretty confident in Hooker in terms of the money line aspect. I think his chances of winning are around 65%. I'd say minus 200 is a pretty accurate line for him. Minus 190, somewhere around there. And I would be stoked to see Felder pull off the victory. Big fan of the guy, him being from Philadelphia and all, and him being a great commentator, a great personality. It would be cool to see Felder win. I just think the advantages are slightly more in favor of Hooker here, being from his hometown. How, as I mentioned it before, that city kickboxing. I mean, sometimes narratives around gyms are overrated. Oh, he trains at AKA. He trains with Daniel Cormier. He must be good. That's an overrated narrative. But when you're training at city kickboxing, and when all these guys are in camp, Adesany's got a fight coming up soon. Kakar France is in camp. I'm sure Volkanovski's training nonstop with his boys. I mean, you got so much good talent. Brad Riddell's in camp. So much good talent over at City Kickboxing. It's just going to be hard to beat any one of those guys in these fights. So I'm picking France to win. I'm picking Riddell to win. I'm picking Crute to win. I'm picking pretty much all the Aussies to win. I mean, it might be a recipe for disaster, but I'm pretty confident in Hooker in this one, and I think he gets that late stoppage. So let's go with a 4th round TKO for Dan Hooker here, and it should be a great fight, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I don't think I have any bets locked in right now, although that minus 175 Angela Hill, I will probably bet that right as the podcast wraps up. We'll likely end up on Brad Riddell and Jimmy Crute at plus money. Might even bet Marcos de Lima at minus 140 as well. So look out for all my official bets on my Bet MMA tips page. I will tweet that out later in the week. And thank you to each and every person who is tuning into this episode. I appreciate you all very much. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Hope you all enjoyed the card this weekend, and I will see you all next week before UFC Norfolk. Peace.